The one thing that I believe would work everywhere is fighting. Because it doesn't matter what color you are, what country you come from, or what language you speak. We're all human beings, and fighting's in our DNA, man. We get it and we like it.
I'm Michael Morgan, and welcome to this week's edition of the WHOACAST. Joining me, as usual, my Cody G from WHOA TV.
Hey, Mike. What's going on?
Well, you know what? I would love to dilly-dally and tell you how tired I am because I took my son at 4 o'clock to swimming this morning, but we've got a pretty stacked episode. On this episode, we'll actually feature us actually recapping this past weekend's action, what's in store for the forthcoming weekend, and our guest. It's actually, it's almost a completely Scottish affair, if it weren't for us, but our guests are Robert Whiteford, Chris Bungard, and Stevie Ray. So racing on, like I say, we've got lots to cover. We'll also be addressing your listener mail and the brand new section, which G will actually break down for us later, but more on that when the time comes. But first off, I just really wanted to quickly touch on Bellator 225. I don't know about you, but I've got to hold my hand up. I personally feel as though, Bellator, first of all, didn't get a look in on last week's show. And considering there were 14 fights and 14 finishes, I think that was pretty remiss of me, to leave this off the agenda. I mean, Matt Mitrione, again, taking on Sergey Kharitonov for the second time, delivered 14 fights, 14 finishes. Now, I don't know about you, but there are a few takeaways which I wanted to actually recap. How about yourself?
Oh, yeah, there's plenty to talk about. Not only 14 fights and 14 finishes, Michael, it's split right in half. 7 KOs, 7 submissions, and then...
Boom!
Right? Like, that's called action-packed. And then also the fastest submission in Bellator history, 11 seconds. Are you kidding me? Like, this card was unbelievable. I implore all the listeners to go back and watch this card if you're just into action-packed MMA. Even if you don't know the fighters' names, just go watch it.
I'd like to start with that world record or world breaking, let's start again. That world breaking attempt in terms of record-breaking attempt. We got there eventually. Record-breaking attempt by Aviv Ghazali. Now, for me, that heel hook, which actually took place in just about 11 seconds, that is actually the fastest submission in the promotion's history. But I got a lot of traction in terms of conversations which were actually taking place on Twitter. And again, if guys, girls listening want to converse with both myself and G on Twitter, I'm at Mike WHOA TV and G is at G from WHOA TV. But a lot of debate back and forth around the fact that it looked as though his opponent, Edward Muravitsky, actually outstretched his hand to do a touch of gloves, and a lot of people were saying it's a bit of a douche move, a dick move, bit of of chicanery going on there, in that he did the Imanari roll and then straight into that heel hook. What do you make of that?
Well, run it back. Aviv put his hand out, or Edward did? Who was the jerk?
Edward stretched his hand out,
and Aviv ignored it.
Instead of touching, and then just dove straight into the Imanari roll, and then went for the heel hook.
I do think that's kind of douchebaggery, but at the same time, I'm just fine with what happened. I know I'm like contradicting myself, but is it a dick move? Yeah, but who cares? Like, defend the heel hook. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fight. Like,
well, for me, the ref gives you really clear instructions. Defend yourself at all times.
Exactly.
And not only that, I mean, what's he supposed to do? Was his game plan from the get-go. It was going to be fast-paced from the outset. So what's he supposed to do? Pause and then outstretch his hand and then go for the Imanari roll? No,
exactly.
The guy had actually built up momentum, so let him do his thing.
And we've talked about this before with the knee to Masvidal did with Ben. Same thing. These guys drill these really quick, fast moves across the octagon. These are not flukes. These are not things that they're just like, oh, I'm just going to run across the octagon and do this. No, they practice this over and over and over again. So he has no time to touch his glove. He's going in for the Imanari roll, and he got it done. It was gorgeous.
And speaking of gorgeous, what I wanted to neatly roll into was Nick Newell's victory, the fact that he got an arm triangle choke. And it was basically slowing the roll of Corey Browning, who, for want of a better word, was on a tear of late. He defeated Baby Slice. He then took out Aaron Chalmers. He was somewhat of he was getting the reputation as a prospect killer. And, basically Nick Newell, who a lot of people are pointing out does have some serious skills, and the fact that he was actually fighting for his place on the Bellator roster, came up trumps there. So that was a real sight to behold.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think if you really pay attention to MMA, and also if you watch organizations outside of the UFC, which is someone that, like me, I don't always watch the other organizations, but people that do really hard, they know about this kid. I mean, he was undefeated until he went up against Justin Gaethje in World Series of Fighting, and he put up a good fight against Justin Gaethje. What does that tell you? You know what?
Well, exactly, and what a person to have lost to as well.
That's what I mean, and that's his first loss. And he's had, 15 professional fights. His only loss was to Justin Gaethje. And then Dana White kind of did him dirty on the Contender Series. They kind of gave him somebody that they knew, I think, would grind him out in what's his name, Munez. And he put him against the cage and he grinded him out. And that's his next loss. So it's just like, this guy can fight, and he uses his, I don't want to say disability, but he uses his arm to his advantage. Like, he clinched up Corey and held on to his left arm and took him to the ground while gripping it, and used it to get over to a mount, and then finally to the choke. And it was, even the commentator said that, some guys don't even know how to defend that. And you would think that would be something that slows him down. Not at all. He uses it to win. And I think that's just incredible. And I think people are sleeping on him.
I mean, that's a nice little segue into the main event, actually, and that is, someone who was definitely sleeping, in my opinion, was Matt Mitrione. Basically, that loss to Karatona, he will be kicking himself. I mean, I get the whole post-fight explanation, and the fact is, his gum shield wasn't being spat out. It was ill-fitting, hence the reason why it was actually falling out. He wasn't actually spitting out. But the fact still remains, he's found himself in a predicament now when, looking back on that, his loss of attention, the fact that, he thought that a live opponent who was in the throes of combat was going to give him yet another chance to pick up his gum shield. Come on, who does that? He must be sadly mistaken when he's in there in such an important fight, considering that this was the second time round. He's got no one obviously to blame but himself. Yeah,
and also Sergey's not someone to take lightly. I don't know if Matt did, but Sergey is now on an 8-fight winning streak. But when he was with fighting Matt, it was a 7-fight win streak. That's a title contender. That's someone that's basically on a roll. You got to take this guy serious. And secondly, I think the blame also falls with the corner. I don't know if you know this, Mike, but they had a mouthpiece that fit in their gym bag that was also in the corner. And Matt was trying to get them to give him his mouthpiece, and the corner was like, no, focus on the fight. Like, they wanted to corner him. Don't worry about the mouthpiece. But he was like, nah, go get the one that fits. So it was like a failure on both parts. And to be honest with you, Matt won the first round, so give him the mouthpiece. It's not like he was struggling in the first round or whatever. It was the mouthpiece that he was struggling with. So listen to your fighter.
Massively.
Yeah, listen to your fighter and get the one that fits out the bag that's right by the fucking corner and give it to him. But instead, they didn't do it.
And that was clearly the source of his distraction. So why not take that distraction away so he can actually concentrate on the business at hand? I think looking back on that, both, like you say, in context now, the corner and Matt Mitrione, have some serious questions which they're going to have to iron out before they get back in there again.
Yeah, like what's the priority? If the mouthpiece is distracting him and causing your fighter not to stick to the game plan, or it's giving his opponent, ample opportunity to be successful and land on him, you might want to give him the mouthpiece that fits. I mean, it's an easy solution, but I guess maybe they were just maybe disorganized in the corner and whatnot, or not thinking the mouthpiece was a big deal. But it cost him severely. Sergey came with that uppercut and a knee and put him out.
Exactly. Were there any takeaways in terms of highlights that you wanted to go over? Because to be honest with you, those were the three which kind of like jumped off. Don't get me wrong, we could be here all
I know
day
we can do this from the prelims to the main card. I mean, the card delivered.
There you go.
But yes, I'm a huge Ricky Mendejas fan. I fell in love with his debut when he beat up James Gallagher. Even though I like James Gallagher, I love the show that Ricky put on for us. And I kind of like that he shut up the heel, even though I like the heel so much. Ricky shut him up, and it was just a hell of a debut. Like, it caught my attention. And then he goes like on a 2-fight losing streak. And then he comes back and he gets a first round KO against Ahmet, I can't say his last name, Karetali. And it was beautiful. And who doesn't like a nice counter while going backwards? I love shit like that. You remember when Stipe and Verdun fought, and Verdun went right at him, and Stipe's moving back and just drops him while moving backwards, and then same thing here. I love shit like that, and Ricky did the same thing. Ahmet came forward kind of like with his hands down, a little wild, put a lot of power in his right hand, and Ricky moved backwards, dropped him with a right hand, and followed up with some nice, precise ground and pound. Fight over, round one. And I was happy for him. He needed the win. He needs the confidence again. So it was great as a fan, and then it was also nice to see.
100%. Any more?
I think we got it pretty much covered for me, because I know we got so much to talk about, but it was just a great card overall.
Exactly.
Just everyone needs to go watch it.
I think then now is an opportune time to actually segue into one of our first guests. Now, this guy has an insane following online. Chris, the bad guy, Bungard. As I mentioned, this is almost exclusively, in terms of guests, a strictly Scottish affair. So let's get into our first guest, Chris, the bad guy, Bungard. I remember the last time we spoke, and it was you who was pressing this on me, and I was quite reluctant to accept it. You were talking about Charlie Leary being a very game opponent. You were talking about that Charlie Leary would be a challenge. You were talking about the fact that Charlie Leary wouldn't be a walk in the park. And it all transpired exactly how you actually said it would. I'm just curious, how serious were you taking him as an opponent? Because obviously from what you said there, very.
Yeah, I took him. I mean, I trained as hard as I could. I took him very serious. I took him probably more serious than I took Brazier, to be fair. But obviously there was a dramatic weight loss in the last couple of days, in the last couple of hours to make weight, which obviously showed in my performance. I was weak in there. I wasn't myself. I didn't warm up. I couldn't warm up. I could hardly walk. So that is definitely a factor. Whether it was a factor of whether I won the fight or not, I do not know. Nobody will ever know. But it was definitely a factor in my performance, and to me, that's how I lost the fight. But yeah, Charlie's a tough opponent, a good guy, and I just take the loss on the chin and make the right adjustments within my nutrition and my weight loss, and take on to the next one.
So, did you actually for a second think, especially, on your way back to the dressing room, that perhaps, a weight change or a weight class would be, on the cards for you?
Not a change in weight division or that, no, not at all, but definitely a change up in my nutrition and some of my diet. I always eat healthy and that, but I think it's just I need to change up the foods I'm eating at the times, and I've brought in a new guy for my next camp, so we'll see how it goes. But it was definitely I couldn't warm up right. I didn't feel myself as I thought the energy of the crowd would get me up when I got out there. But it didn't fuck. It was worse than I thought. And as soon as I felt him, like as soon as we clinched, I knew like I was weak as well, and I just knew I was tired right after that as well. And I'm a fit guy, you know what I mean? I was ready to go, but I knew there was something up. And what a way to find out is when you're like a minute into a fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah, tell me about it. You know, in the run-up to that fight, there was how can I put it? There was a bit of shenanigans going on between yourself and SBG's finest. Just talk us through that whole situation, because it would seem that there was a little bit of a falling out with SBG, and especially, you know, their top guys. What exactly happened down there?
To be honest, I don't even know what happened. The full situation's still a bit strange to me. Obviously, I prepared for the Brazier fight with Peter, and then I don't know. Like after I won, he congratulated me on his Instagram. We spoke, we texted, and it was fine. Then he lost the miles, and all of a sudden he wanted to fight me. And the whole situation was just out of the blue. It caught me off guard a wee bit. And then I texted him and we were speaking. I was just saying like, I didn't see that happening coming. And he's like, oh, if they put us together, we could make it. If we sold it right, we could be a main event or a co-main event somewhere if we done it right. You know, I'm like, oh, hold a minute, like this guy actually wants to fight me. So that's the first I got to it. And then I was just like, look, listen, I don't want to fight anybody for SBG. I've been training there the last 5 years, and it wasn't my style, you know what I mean? Like, I've made friends with the fighters, the staff, the coaches. I stayed with a family over in Dublin, and it was just like, I just didn't want to be against SBG, that was it. And I don't think he liked the fact that I said no, and then if I had the pictures up, so now we're here, you know what I mean? So, as far as I'm concerned, fuck him. But it's like, he's made a bit of a rat move, but Oliver, I don't know what it was. I think I was getting a bit of publicity because I beat Brazier and he lost the miles, and I think we had a spar before the Brazier fight. He probably thought like he could beat me and maybe wanted to take my thunder. I don't know, man. Honestly, I don't know where it came to, but you know, I mean, it's happened now. And as I say, fuck him. I'm just here doing me, and he can do him. Not me.
I mean, speaking of doing him, specifically, we're talking about Peter Queally. One of the things which, you know, obviously is in the back of my mind is just from the recent, or just from the pictures that he put up of what looked like you on the rough end of sparring. It just makes me think perhaps there is stuff which needs to be worked out, obviously, in the cage. Is that something that you would entertain? Could you see you and Peter Queally, given that you were former sparring partners, could you see you and Peter Queally going head to head in the cage?
As for the pictures, like it looks like he's as if he's put me in my ass, but it's not like I shot for a takedown at the end of the round, and that's me just getting back up. So like, he hurt me with everything. He didn't even put me down once or hurt me once, so just to clear that up. But as for a future fight with Peter, it's probably gone that way now that he's annoyed me that much, but you know what I mean, he's fighting Ryan Scope now. Plus he just pulled out of the Terry Brazier fight, that guy that I just beat. He's only won one fight in his last 6, I think. And I think Scope maybe beat him. So I mean, he's in the spot to start calling the shots. He's not got any. He's not got any pull, you know what I mean? We all know John's got the pull, so if it happens down the line, it happens. But I like to see him face to face first, and we'll see what he's saying then.
Do you think that it's something that can be actually worked out face to face? Because it would seem, this is what it looks like on the face of it. I mean, you tell me if there's anything deeper here. I've got Peter Queally down as a very game fighter. He's just down to scrap. Now, regardless of whether that means scrapping with teammates or regardless whether that means, you know, scrapping with, you know, people he doesn't actually know, he's just down to fight. Is it just his keenness that actually got ahead of him, or is it something a little bit more?
No, I think Peter's definitely down to scrap. You know, he fights tough guys. He's a tough opponent. I've sparred with him. I know he hits hard, but I think the fact is he just doesn't class me as a teammate. Like, I was just only going over there to like train every few months. So I wasn't really an SBG teammate. He thinks I could sell. I've got a bit of fan base. He probably thinks he's a good one we could sell, but I think that's about it.
So, all being well, the dust settling after the 27th of September when, Bellator actually pitches up its tent in Dublin. Is that a fight which you'll be pursuing? Or, I hate to use this old cliche because I literally detest it, but are you just willing to fight who they put in front of you?
Is what fight? The Peter Queally fight?
Yeah, that's the one which I would like to see, quite honestly, because there's a backstory there.
Nah, but I'm not giving a fuck. If whatever happens, but I don't give a fuck about Peter Queally, you know what I mean? He's irrelevant to my life and most people's lives. Like, nobody wants to tune in to watch him, man. He's not got a fan base, you know what I mean? Fuck. But I'll be tuned in. I think Ryan will beat him. But I've got other offers, so I'm just going to see who I'm fighting and just focus on my fight. Not me. I don't really give a fuck about him.
Now, you know me and my usual approach. I'm like a dog of a bone. You just kind of thrown ever so slightly my way, an exclusive, I'm hoping, and that there's a lot of talk around this November card, which is going down in London. Is that something that you're looking to get on?
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking for me on November.
So, you being on the November card, I take it you're deep in negotiations as to you've actually got names on the table, is what I'm driving at.
I know what you're driving at. You're always driving at that, fuck's sake. But there's no names yet. But they're saying I'm 100% got to be on that card. So it's only at London, but I think they're maybe doing one in Newcastle as well. So you can definitely see me on one of the cards.
Fantastic. I'm just curious though, looking at the whole landscape, looking at Bellator as your home. I take it things are good with you there, you're comfortable there. What is it that you're hoping to achieve out of the whole Bellator experience?
Yeah, I love it in Bellator. I feel at home. I'm relaxed. I'm enjoying my training better. Obviously, I'm a much better contract than I've ever been. I'm enjoying life much more. I'm just enjoying this journey. I've no plans for the future or that. Just taking it one fight at a time and taking it from there. But obviously, you want to make your way up the rankings and fight some of the best guys in the world. So I just bring on the next one, whoever it may be, and I'll try and put them away, and that's it.
Fantastic. Chris, as always, it's been good catching up with you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your return back to the cage, because I know you always bring your fans with you, which is always a pleasure to see. So I'm really hoping that there will be a fight announcement pretty soon.
Yeah, you and me both, man.
So one of my main takeaways from that was this simmering beef between SBG, in particular, Chris Bungard, and it would seem that, on the cards is going to be a showdown which is going to take place. Obviously, not now. The matchups for Bellator Dublin have actually been decided. So I think sometime in the future we will obviously see something go down between Chris Bungard and Peter Queally.
Yes, I actually have some questions about this bad boy. How did this beef actually start? What is the drama? I can just tell there's something going on. And then also, Chris posted photos of him beating up, Peter posted photos of him beating up Chris in a sparring match. That's, that kind of goes against the rules of sparring, that unwritten code. That's kind of douchey, but how did they get to this point?
The long and the short of it is, it looks as though when Peter Queally's opponent pulled out, he wanted to actually challenge Chris Bungard to a fight. Now, when you think about it, they're sparring partners, but you also have to look at, I think Chris did actually underline this point in the interview. He was basically seen as a visitor, somebody who was passing through and not necessarily a teammate. So that's where it all stemmed from. Peter Queally obviously looks at him differently to how Chris Bungard views SBG, in particular Peter Queally. There seems to be more camaraderie from Chris Bungard's viewpoint, and that's why it all kicked off. There was a difference of opinion in how they viewed each other, and Peter Queally basically wanted a fight. He wanted an opponent, and he saw one in Chris Bungard. That's where it all stemmed from.
Oh, yeah, it seems kind of a little bit heated here. But what did you think of the photo? My cat is acting crazy. Get down. What did you think of the photo? he just jumped up on all the equipment. I'm like, are you nuts? What did you think of all the photos that he posted? I didn't get to see them. Are they bad? Like, what do they look like?
Well, they looked from somebody who isn't informed and somebody who doesn't have the perspective as to what actually happened, that Chris does actually come across as having been given a bit of a pasting by Peter Queally. But as again, Chris was really keen to point out, no, there was a different perspective that he was really happy to share and to unpack in the actual interview. So, the thing is, whilst those photos are out there and they do make Chris look really bad, there is context to those photos.
Wow. And then Peter Queally, of course, is SPG. And don't they have a history of releasing photos? Didn't Connor do something like this to somebody we know?
Well, that seems to be kind of like the modus operandi. But, suffice to say, I really want to see a future matchup between Peter Queally and Chris Bungard, because there's obviously unfinished business there.
And that's always fun, because I swear to God, every episode we talk about this, we are into beefs that are authentic. And of course, this podcast is about causing trouble. This is what me and you do, whether it's on MMA Twitter or with your interviews. We cause trouble.
There you go.
But the best part about trouble is that it should be real. It should be authentic. When two fighters don't like each other, they typically put on a good show. So I'm on board for this, and I would definitely watch it. Hopefully, what do you think, like Bellator London, or what do you think might be a good time for this?
I personally feel that London might be a little bit too soon for Peter Queally, who is, going to be on the doubling card.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I do see this going down possibly early 2020. But it's funny that you mentioned about beef actually bringing out the best in people. I mean, that was kind of almost the opposite in Stevie Ray's interview, which we're going to hear now. I mean, essentially what he was saying was, one, he's fighting for his life, he's fighting for his job even.
Yeah.
But, it's that sort of motivation that he actually needs. And the fact is, he's fighting Michael Johnson, who has fought a who's who of mixed martial arts athletes, and he feels that's going to bring the best out of him. Now, I have to, firstly address the elephant in the room. Obviously, you're coming off the back of a pretty devastating knockout. I mean, how do you actually process that? What have you done to actually not only relive that whole situation, but, work through that now?
To be honest, I feel like it's just kind of part of the fight game. Like, I can think about it and try and, one thing I would say is I need to focus on paying attention more, if that makes sense. Like, because I think I've been bad for blinking as I'm throwing shots before, and I kind of overextended with but I had to that was part of my plan, obviously, to try and close the distance fast, because Santos had 5 inches reach advantage on me, so I had to prepare to close the distance fast. And I've kind of reached in, came in my double jab, cross to the body, I think I threw, and he's just took one step back and threw the right hand, and I maybe should have fainted a bit more and not kind of telegraphed that I was coming in with like a 3-punch combination, because he's just timed it perfect, to be honest. He's stepped back, countered me with the right hand, and he's punched me on the skull almost. Hit me on, it was like the kind of temple forehead area. And yeah, I've obviously just went out for a slight couple of seconds, and then that was it. That's fight was over. So yeah, pretty much just get back to work, like making sure I'm bringing my hands back to my chin, feinting more, and making sure my legs are underneath my punches so that I'm not like overreaching. But to be honest, not looking too much in it. Just, it's one of those things could happen to anybody. I didn't even really get a chance to get started in that fight. I'd just started feeling loose, just started feeling good, and then, shit happens.
Now, I take it that you've obviously played the fight back. I take it, there is some kind of processing actually, which would have actually gone on. Did you actually, looking back at that, what is your processing, or what is the process for you to actually acknowledge what actually happened there? I hear what you're saying about paying attention more. That's in terms of technique. But in terms of what actually happened in that fight, it ending in a KO, processing that KO, how do you actually do that?
What do you mean, processing it?
Well, actually, working through the actual process of being KO'd, acknowledging what actually happened, and coming to terms of it. It's a big loss, isn't it, in terms of being knocked out. So how do you actually get past that from a psychological point of view, processing it in your mind?
To be honest, like, obviously at the time it's gotten and it is gotten, but to be honest, it's just, how do I deal with it? It's just pretty much tell myself shit happens. The way I see it, I fight in the UFC. I've had 10 fights in the UFC. I've been knocked out twice. Once against Paul Felder and once against Leonardo Santos. I've won by knockout a couple of times, and obviously some decisions. And it's just pretty much part of the game. Sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. It's motivated me to get back in the gym, work harder, work certain things on the technique to maybe why it happened. But as far as like psychologically and whatever, what have I done to process it, just pretty much accept it. There's nothing else you can do apart from accept it. It's a fight game. I fight in like I said, the biggest league in the world. And sometimes that happens. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would say.
Well, fast forward to this week's announcement. I mean, essentially, if you ask me, if you don't mind me saying, this, in effect, is a step up in competition. Michael Johnson's been round the block. He's fought an almost who's who of mixed martial artists. Now, in terms of this matchup, were you given a choice, or was it just a case of you being thrown back in? And if you don't mind me saying, thrown to the lions somewhat.
Yeah. To be honest, I was quite... when they give me Michael Johnson, I know that he's been in there with, some beasts. He's beat some guys. I think it was only a couple of years ago that he beat Dustin Poirier, who's now fighting for the title in a couple of weeks. He fought Khabib. Yeah, he was pretty much beating Khabib on the feet until Khabib decided to maul him on the ground. But yeah, he's the biggest name I've had, and it's obviously coming off a loss. So it's a wee bit like, some people might see it as a bit surprising from the UFC why they've, because it's almost like, you would think I would have got that fight if I had won my fight. But to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I've beat big names. I've beat Ross Pearson. I've beat Joe Lozon. I've beat obviously some other guys. I've been in there with some of the kind of best in the world: Paul Felder, Cajun Johnson, Leonardo Santos, and then so I mean, it's a big name, but stylistically I think it's pretty much a good fight. He's a southpaw. I've only ever fought another southpaw once, and I never even really got a chance to fight. I was Alan Patrick. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I've sparred a lot of southpaws, worked certain stuff, but I'm looking forward to getting in there with another southpaw. And it's kind of like nothing. Well, obviously, I've got stuff to lose. It's the last fight of my contract as well. So yeah, it's like do or die. Pretty much what I do every fight anyway. I'm going in there to try and get the win. Probably a little bit more motivation. The fact that I've kind of got like a big name. There's maybe people expecting me to lose, and I always feel like I rise to the occasion when I get stuff like this. You know, when I fought Joe Lozon and I wasn't really anybody at that point. And I co-main evented against Ross Pearson. I managed to get the win against both they guys, and that last fight, like, people might look at me and kind of judge my performance or my skill set based on that fight, but like I said, I never really got a chance to even get going. I believe I'm a lot better than kind of people have seen as well. So no, it's like, here's my chance to show everybody what I'm really made of. I've got Michael Johnson, who's been, I think he's been as high as number 5 lightweight in the world, after he knocked out Dustin Poirier. So yeah, happy days.
Now it's interesting. It's interesting you say that, you know, it's the last fight on your contract. I take it, you know, obviously following a win, you're obviously wanting to negotiate up your contract, or you're happy with your existing contract, or would you be like what seems to be a growing trend among UFC competitors, UFC athletes, you'd test free agency?
Well, yeah, to be honest, I'm happy with the UFC. I like the UFC. I feel like they're the kind of Champions League MMA. But so yeah, I'm just gonna go in there, try and beat up Michael Johnson, and try and get the win, and hope. Then obviously, if that happens, I'm pretty sure the UFC will give me a pretty good contract. And we'll see what happens. I'm not even looking too much into the whole contract thing. The way I'm seeing it is like, you know what, I'm just going to go in there and fight like it's my last day on earth. Just go in there, have fun, try and kick the shit out of him. He's going to try and kick the shit out of me. And somebody's going to be right. Somebody's going to get the win.
So I take it, obviously, we're going to see the vintage Stevie Braveheart Ray of old. But, you know, I think there does, if you don't mind me saying, Stevie, there is a distinction between Stevie Braveheart Ray and Stevie fucking Ray. Now, I really do see that they are two distinct personalities. Do you recognise that within yourself?
What do you mean? I've got two different personalities to my fight style, or like?
Exactly that. I would say, for me, Stevie fucking Ray is the more aggressive, come forward. He is the guy who is knocking people out. He is the guy who is maintaining the centre of the octagon. He is the guy who's pressing the action. Now, Stevie Braveheart Ray seems to be the more tactical. He seems to be the more methodical. He seems to be the more, if you don't mind me saying, safer fighter. So who will be in the octagon come UFC Singapore?
It's hard to tell. Like, once I get in there, obviously he's probably going to try and press forwards. I'm just going to go in there and try and knock his head off. Like, I'm not going to talk all this talk and trash talk and say I'm going to do this. Every time, I'm going to go in there and like I said, it could be the last fight that I ever fight in the UFC. That's the potential. So I'm going to go out. I can't even think of the words, but I'm just going to go out in my shield type thing. I'm just going to go in there, have fun, and just try and put on a really good fight. Not even thinking about the win. Obviously, I'm going to try and win, but I'm just going to go in there and fight. I feel like sometimes before I've overthought it, and I think fighters sometimes do obviously there's a science to the sport a bit, you know, being the fastest guy and, you know, all the kind of technique side to it. But I think, to be honest, I fight best when I've never ever had a game plan. I just go in there and fight. I've never had a game plan, just go in and try and win. And I feel like when I've done those sort of fights, it's been, you know, regardless win or loss, it's been a good fight. I'm just going to go forward, try and get the win any way possible.
Final question. I know it's a recurring theme every time you and I speak, but I'm just intrigued as to your hunger for the UFC to come back to Scotland. There's obviously you, there's Joanne Calderwood, and I just wondered what your appetite for the UFC obviously coming back to Scotland is right now as you prepare for what is going to be one of the hardest fights of your career.
To be honest, I'm not too fussed about it. It's more for the fans that would be good, obviously, so that a lot of my fans can, you know, come and see and watch it live. And it was an amazing thing walking out to that huge support. And, but if anything, I'd quite like to, you know, fight. Like this one's in Singapore. I've never really fought in like Vegas or anything like that yet. So, you know, I quite like the fact of just fighting about, get my name out there a bit more. And yeah, this fight's perfect. It's in Singapore. It's against Michael Johnson, big name. So I'm going to go out there and look to make a statement. And, you know, if I get the win, then it probably would make sense for them to come back to Scotland. There's me, there's Paul Craig, there's Danny Henry and Joanne. I think all of us are coming off losses. So it's not the best for Scottish MMA the now. Yeah, I think every one of us are coming off losses. But like I said, it's the name of the game. Shit happens sometimes, you know. It's a fight game. It's not like we're going fighting a local guy along at the pub. It's some of the best athletes and fighters in the world on the biggest stage. So, yeah, be cool. Obviously, go out there, get the win, and then, you know, if I beat him, then I could kind of get probably even a top 15 guy for coming to Scotland.
That'll be pretty amazing to see, and I'm wishing you all the best. Like I say, that I can't really stress it enough. This is going to be a fight for the ages for me, and I think in terms of you, one of your biggest opponents to date, I think, you know, a lot of people obviously going to be pulling for you. A lot of people are going to be behind you, so that makes it more eagerly anticipated. So in 9 weeks' time, it's going to be a pleasure to see you stepping back into the octagon. Thanks, man.
I hope it's a good fight. I hope Johnson looks like he comes to bang. He's coming to try and, you know, he's coming to fight. I'm going to come to fight. Hopefully it's a good fight. You know, win, lose, draw. I'm going to go out there and try and put on a good, entertaining fight for the fans.
Personally, I feel like the big takeaway from that interview was the fact that, you know, he feels as though he has acknowledged and actually processed the KO which he's coming off the back of, and you know, he feels as though he's sufficiently motivated now to prove the doubters wrong, in that, you know, Michael Johnson obviously is a big dog, he's a live dog as well. He's going to be coming back down to lightweight, and I think Stevie Ray's plan is to showing that perhaps that's not a real good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned for both fighters. I actually like Stevie Ray's attitude, and I think you're 100% correct on this. He seems to have, like you said in the interview, he's processed what went wrong. He even talked about overextending and getting his legs up under him, because that is exactly what went wrong when he fought Leonardo dos Santos, who was known to be a counter striker. That is what
100%.
Right. His bread and butter is jiu-jitsu, but when it comes to striking, his expertise is counter-striking, so you can't do that with him. And Stevie Ray seems to have understood that you just got to take things like that seriously when you're fighting someone.
Yeah.
So hopefully he's done his work and his study on Michael Johnson as well. My issue with Michael Johnson is that he does go back and forth between featherweight and lightweight. And I don't know about you, Michael, but whenever a fighter tries to like reinvent themselves on a whole nother weight class and it doesn't work and then they go back down or they're back and forth, I find that, I don't know if your career's on a decline, but when you can't find a home, I worry about you. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think it's one way of actually, if you're being offered a fight, and that is, the UFC matchmakers will, oftentimes ask you to fill in either a late notice or oftentimes ask you to take a break from your weight category because they're having trouble matching opponents.
Right.
I personally don't feel that's a bad thing. And considering, for me, we are talking about someone who isn't on the decline, someone who has had moderate success in the past. But, more importantly, I feel in terms of skill and in terms of matchmaking, possibly, the UFC are looking at this as a real way of actually testing Stevie Ray's mettle.
Oh, I definitely think they're giving him one hell of a test. And not only is it a one hell of a test in his opponent, like psychologically as well. His back is up against the wall. He's, like he said, he's fighting for his career. And didn't he mention that he might not fight again? Like he's fighting on his last fight on his UFC contract. So this is, and he likes the UFC. He said he wants to stay there. It's not like, remember you had asked him about testing the waters with other promotions, and he's like, nah, I kind of like the UFC. He's not complaining about fighters' pay. He's not like those other guys that are like, man, I want to test the waters. He's like, I'm good here, and I got one fight left.
And that's why this is such a pivotal fight, because not only is he fighting for his career, but it's not as though he's got much negotiation power.
Right.
If things do go a little bit pear-shaped, because you might remember in the past, it was, albeit under, I think, I'm confident in saying this, it was something negotiated out of his hands. But, there was a time when we were looking at Stevie Ray not being re-signed off the back of his previous contract. Now that he's actually been re-signed, hence the reason why he's in a more precarious position this time round, because, essentially, this is the last fight on his contract. So the negotiation would have to start again. So he obviously needs an emphatic win in order, first of all, to keep his job, but more importantly, to negotiate upwards in terms of pay, in terms of basically the benefits that he's going to get.
He's going to be able,
with the UFC.
Right, meaning he's going to be able to barter with a win, and if he loses, then he ain't got nothing really. It's either a decrease in pay or possibly get cut. But we also need to discuss the fact that Michael Johnson is coming off a really hard loss from Josh Emmett. He took a hard knockout, and I'm thinking he's going to want to rebound from that. He's going to come out and want to get this done. You're going to want to rebound from such a, I don't want to say embarrassing knockout, but he was knocked out cold, one shot. So he's going to want to, he's got another resurgence that he's going to want in his career. You know what I mean? So I think he's got a tough, they both have a tough fight in front of them for different reasons and different motivation too.
Again, I know I'm shoehorning this segue in, but Robert Whiteford, our final guest for the day, he has been in an interesting fight or two. And this is one person who, I was applauding when he revealed, or when it was revealed, that he was actually coming back to mixed martial arts, having retired at the end of, I think it was mid to late last year. And one of the things which I'm actually keen to see is, how he actually fares against, Bellator's killers. And I think it's about time we heard from the man.
All right.
He's basically come back from retirement, and it's a welcome return to Robert Whiteford.
How you doing, Michael?
I'm real good, real good. Not as good as you, I have to say.
You've obviously been keeping up with my social media then, haven't you?
Ever so slightly. So, first off, let's just rewind ever so slightly. Now, I understand that you're going to have to be very, very careful how you couch this, but, to those of us who have come to know and love you and to expect you, to do the business in the cage, it was a bit of a shock actually seeing you hang up your gloves. Was it the actual frustration and the actual wranglings with ACB, which was the final nail in the coffin? I mean, you tell me, what was it that actually inspired you to say, you know what, forget this for a game of soldiers?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much you hit the nail on the head there. They just basically put me into the wilderness, didn't they? And I was the only one brave enough really to voice my opinion with the current situation. Nobody else was saying anything. So the fact that I spoke my mind and said what I was thinking, it probably made the situation 100 times worse for myself. If I'd kept my mouth shut and just been one of those quiet guys and played the game, I would have probably got released a lot earlier. But the fact that I voiced my opinion and aired my frustrations public, then I don't think it's that well with the Russians, did it?
And, you know, again, not meaning to name names or drop people in it, but was it the organisation that you had the issue with, or was it, you know, particular individuals that were basically making you tread through treacle?
I mean, I haven't really got a clue. If you say the organisation, they're all really tied together, aren't they? So anybody that was involved with them, I had to run in with them at some point. The fact that you couldn't get a proper date or like a proper fight card lined up and then one actually come to fruition, you know, they just kept on dropping off. And the fact that obviously, you know, I'm fucking a long time in the game now, so I know a lot of people in it, so I knew what was going on behind the scenes. And I wasn't willing to put a training camp together when you know how much the cost really, and the fact that I travel to America for my training camps and stuff. It's not like it wasn't going to cost me a big outlay. I was having to outlay a lot of money for a fight card not to go ahead or something. And then really just the matchups I was getting given after that, I was like, fucking hell, you want to send me to Russia to fight a Russian fucking in front of Putin or something, you know what I mean? It was just like, what the fuck's the point here? The reason I signed up with you guys was to fight in Europe. So a lot of, like, my friends and stuff could travel and it would make it easier for me. And it just wasn't happening that way. So I was fucking pretty pissed off, to say the least.
So fast forward to this year and you are back in the cage, not literally, figuratively at the moment, because no opponent or venue has actually been announced. It was around about, I think, June, July that the shock announcement that Bellator had actually snapped you up as part of their signing spree. So what was it about Bellator that made it attractive to you? Because obviously, you know, the world could have been your oyster considering, you know, the stature and where you've been.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're putting on a European cards as well, they're doing the European tour, that was a pretty big pulling factor. And Judd Samuel, really, you know, I've always been friends with him, and he's always kept an eye on my career, and he's always been at me anytime he's had a chance, asking what I'm doing, who I'm fighting for, or when's my next contract negotiations. He's always keen to get me on one of these cards. And if somebody like that approaches me and that they want me to fight for them, it makes it feel that a little bit like more like a friendship thing. So they're not just wanting you to spill your blood for nothing, you know what I mean? They actually appreciate you. You feel a bit appreciated better. So it was probably Judd Samuels really that got it over the line, to be honest.
And like I say, we've had this, you know, whirlwind announcement, and I've got to say, I was shocked when I actually read that. Shocked, I suppose, happily shocked, but shocked nonetheless. You know, again, just talk me through the whole process. What was it that made you feel, you know what, yeah, I'm actually going to come back? What was it that made you feel, you know, let's do this one more time?
I mean, I suppose a lot of people retire because they fall out of love with the game, or they're getting beat, or they're not performing to the way they were. And that was never the case for me. You know, it was I went out on top. Basically, I'm in a 3-fight win streak in one of the biggest promotions in the world at the time. So it wasn't a case of like, oh, I didn't feel like I couldn't do this anymore. It was just my current situation. So when Judd approached me again and the timing was right, I was like, right, let's do it. Let's get this show back on the road. There's still plenty fights left in me. It's not like if I've been in any wars that I've been on the receiving end. Usually the wars I've been in, I've been dishing it out. So it's not like there's a lot of miles on me, you know what I mean? So I've still got it in the tank. It's not like the fights took out. I'm ready still to kick folks' cunts in, as you'd say in Scotland.
So I'm guessing now that we've had the big hoo-ha, the announcement that, you know, you will be on one of the forthcoming cards. I mean, I was a bit surprised not to see you actually matched for Dublin, but I'm expecting to see you in November in London, right?
Well, it's funny you say that because that's the card I was initially trying to target, is Dublin. I was actually on Ibiza when I signed the contract, and I was thinking, right, Dublin's the perfect time for me. Get to enjoy myself over here in Spain, get home, get the head down, and get on that Dublin card. But either the card was full at the time, or they said they didn't have anybody with experience enough to fight me on that card. Then I said at the time, I was listening if there's any pullouts, because I'm sure I think there's a few featherweights on the card as well. I was like, I'll just train alongside them and get ready to fill in for anybody that pulls out. And then again, Jude was like, they've just not got the experience for you to fight them, so you're going to have to hold off to the end of the year. So November was the month I was given after that. So I'm really just waiting to find out. I can't wait, to be honest. I'm chopping at the bit.
Incredible. I know he's been matched already, but our mutual friend Kane Musa and yourself, to a certain extent, I would personally, obviously cards on the table, that Kane and myself are very good friends. But, that aside, I would love to see Kane Musa versus yourself, part 2.
You think he would drop back down to featherweight?
Well, you know something? I know that it's one of the fights that he points to where he feels as though, not necessarily that he was robbed, but he feels very confident that, he actually won that. And him being quite a proud man, him being quite a competitive character, I would not be surprised. So I just put it to you. Is that something that you'd entertain?
Of course I would entertain every single one. They're paying me good money at the end of the day. But you never want to go back, do you? You always want to go forward, and somebody you've already beat quite convincingly. What's the point of revisiting the thing? But he puts on a great show for the fans. But he hypes the fight up, and that's one of the first times probably in my career that I've had somebody on the other side standing like that and giving that back and forth. So I actually enjoyed it, to be honest. It put a spring in my step, and it lit a fire under my arse. So I really enjoyed it. So you never say never, but always like to go forward and break new ground. So that's just a step backwards for me, to be honest.
Now, I'm guessing, though, in the time off, and especially, day in, day out, I guess, the constant preparation, you must be sharpening your tools for a couple of individuals, or even just surveying what's actually available by way of possible opponents for you. Are there any individuals that float your boat who you feel, it'd be good to have a scrap with you?
I mean, to be honest, I've never been one for looking out and thinking, I'd like to fight them or like to fight that one. I know that's what makes just interviews, and the fighter comes on, they name somebody they want to fight, and when somebody just says put anybody in front of me, it's fucking boring for the fans. It's boring for me even saying it. But honest, I'm not one of the guys that fuck about to say it. You know what I mean? Like anybody they want me to fight, I'm ready to fight them. It's not a case of me sitting picking, thinking, I like that one. And I've had a great summer and time off. I've really not been watching that many fights, to be honest, and I've not even put my mind to thinking who I would like to fight. So I'll just leave it to Jude. He can fire the names across and we can go through it and get the show on the road and put a show on for the fans and a show on for myself, to be honest. I can't wait to get in there and spill some blood again. Somebody else's, obviously, no mine.
I mean, obviously, on the roster, there's yourself. Now there's Chris Bungard. Would you entertain, or is it something that's on your mind or in your mind to actually drag Bellator up to Scotland?
Of course it is. That's another thing I'd like to tick off in my box. I dragged the UFC to Scotland, dragged the ACB to Scotland, and then it's just funny that it's going to be Bellator as well. As soon as I get a fight under their banner and get one on the table, then I can go to them and say, right, listen, let's get yourselves up to Scotland and put a show on the Hydro. So that's, when you talk about fights and thinking about people wanting to fight, that's never crossed my mind. But getting Bellator to Scotland is definitely on the cards for me. That's one of those things where it goes down in history books again, So that's definitely in my mind. That is getting them to Scotland. Fantastic.
Finally, just one final question does actually crop up, and that is, your journey, as I say, is a fairly unique one. And it's almost as though you've been there and done that. What is it that you want to actually achieve then in Bellator? What is left for you to achieve? You've had, the highest of highs, especially, when it comes to being paid. And now I know that, Bellator are all about the violent money. But, for you, what is it that you want to get out of Bellator?
I just like fighting, and Bellator's giving me that opportunity. I mean, it's in me. It's in my blood to fight. You know what I mean? I'm going to do it until the wheels fall off, basically. So it's basically them just harnessing me and giving me a platform to perform on it. You know, I'd fight in the back garden if it was for free. You know, it's just lucky I'm getting paid for it, and I'm happy enough with the money Bellator's paying me that I'm making a good living off it again. So honestly, it's just something that runs through my blood. I like fighting, and there's nothing I can shake it. Can't shake it off. And like the time away for the cage, just because I've not been fighting in the cage, doesn't mean I've not been training. I've not been sparring hard and stuff like that. You know, it's in me. I enjoy fighting, and it just feels like there's something missing. It's like you're going for a cup of tea, Michael. You know what I mean? You can sit and drink your tea easy. It's the same for me making that walk to the octagon, and there's nothing better when somebody makes you a good cup of tea and you sit and drink it. Am I right?
100%.
Oh, it's the same when I step in that octagon and I get a good fight. It's the same taste I get in my mouth. It's that easy for me.
Incredible. Robert, I can't wait for the announcement in the run-up to November when you're back, because, you know, you were sadly missed when you hung them up, and I'm so pleased that was short-lived. It's a pleasure to have you back, my man.
Thanks. It's nice hearing that to you, my man.
You probably heard it in my voice that, you know, the excitement of actually Robert Whiteford returning actually fills me with a bit of glee. And I think, you know, finally, you know, his woes are behind him. And, you know, I personally feel as though he can make a real statement in the division.
Well, a couple of questions, because I feel almost like a casual right now. And I have a load of questions about this dude. And I was doing a little bit of research. He's got a really nice record. 15 wins, 4 losses, 6 KOs, 2 submissions. Yeah. He's well-rounded. And he's got 3 wins in a row. What made him retire? Like, what were the demons or something? What's going on? Injuries?
Reading in between the lines. Again, I don't want to put words in his mouth,
right.
But you know what it looked like to me? Mm-hmm. The fact is, he was contracted to ACB, and ACB basically were in a situation where they couldn't actually provide fights, but there were fights on the horizon. They were just having a restructure. But Robert, it seemed, again, not putting words in his mouth, but this is what it looked like from the outside. It seemed as though he wanted out because he wanted to fight. He wanted to actually provide for his family, because that's the only means by which he can do it. So it looked as though ACB were hanging on and basically trying to keep hold of what effectively, or who effectively, is one of, you know, I would say Scotland's best, or one of the best fighters, I would say, hands down, in Europe. So it's no wonder that they wanted to keep a hold of him. So this is what it looked like. Again, I have to keep emphasizing that he didn't actually say this, but right. It looked as though he retired so that he could, you know, clear the air contractually. That's what it looked like.
Oh, similar to like the Eddie Alvarez thing, when there was just like a bunch of red tape when a hot commodity wants to fight for another organization. You know, organizations sometimes don't want to let that person go, but they need to feed their families. They need to fight, and that's what they want to do. That's unfortunate, but
And again, you know, you didn't actually hear that from his lips. So
yeah.
It's kind of like conjecture.
Right.
And I have to keep emphasizing, this is my take on what I saw.
Right, your interpretation. I got you. Who do you think? Who should he fight in Bellator? What's a matchup you would want to see?
I like the idea of basically I think I touched on this, but I think it was towards the end of last year, or mid to late end of last year. He fought a really good friend of mine, as you know, who's Kane Musa. And that was at featherweight. Now, I have to say, Kane has moved up to lightweight, but whenever we speak, he always mentions that being the fight that tested him, that being the fight that he felt he won. I'd love to see Kane come down in weight, especially just for that fight. I'd love to see that all over again. Because it was quite a thrilling fight.
Yes, you did mention that. That is true. And I believe it was a split decision, so it was kind of close, huh?
Very close. Very close.
Yeah, but there's close, and then there's like, who do you think won the first time? You thought Kane won, or did you think your man won?
You know, it's really hard for me, again, to say without bias, because I'm such good friends with Kane. But I'm going with Kane only because I'm biased. I'll just
Right.
put that on the table.
Yeah.
I'm biased because he's a friend.
Right, and then as fans, we're biased. All of us are biased. It's so hard sometimes to make picks objectively. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
we're all in, and then I can do that just being a fan of someone. I can't even imagine being a friend and a fan. So of course I can understand that. But I wish him the best of luck, and I look forward to when he comes down to Bellator. You know.
Exactly. And
gonna be
speaking of friends, we had a massive mailbag this week from our friends on Twitter, loyal listeners. Thank you to everybody who does continue to support the podcast and spread the word as well. But it would be nice if we could take out a few of the letters or emails which actually came in, and tweets which came in as well. So I think it's about that time for listener mail.
Yeah. You want me to take this one here? I got a good few of them over here, hot off the presses.
Okay, well let's take the best. Let's take the best three.
Okay, perfect. I got three in front of me. Let's continue with Bellator. This is from Stinky Minky at Garrett Mink.
Wow.
This is a cool dude. I like him. His question is, do you think Nick Newell will ever get the respect he deserves and be taken seriously?
I think there'll be detractors looking at his disability who don't take him seriously, but once you look at his prowess, whether it's what we saw on Saturday night or what we've seen of him in the cage, I mean, you mentioned yourself, look, he's gone up against one of the UFC's finest in Justin Gaethje. Whilst that wasn't in the UFC, he still fought him nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think that people will take him seriously the more they see him. It's just that at the moment he does look like a little bit out of place because of his disability. But I suppose that the key thing here is we need to look beyond the disability because, you know, as he showed on Saturday, he's quite a versatile fighter. So I think with time, that stigma that does actually exist around Nick Newell, that will disappear. What do you think?
Yeah, he already has my respect because me and you have been watching this for years and we've heard of him, we know of him, we knew about the Gaethje fight, I've watched it a few times. I don't think his arm is a disability because he's choking people out with it. I mean, he's winning with it. He's using it to his advantage. His right hand is monstrous because of it. Like Corey was eating them, but it bothered him. You could see that even Justin Gaethje, he was landing right hands right on his face. It was beautiful. I don't see his disability as an issue, but what I do see maybe is not a lack of respect, but a huge liability to organizations like the UFC and Bellator. I did notice and that, you know, Bellator gave him a 1-fight contract. I heard Dana in a press conference say that if he loses or gets like really injured in the UFC, how bad is it going to look that they let somebody with a disability fight? Because even though he's using this disability to his advantage and using it in the clinch and choking people out and he's winning, people still look at him as a liability, and I hate it, you know. But it's from more of a business standpoint. But I think if Bellator signs him again and he just keeps winning, he eventually, that stigma will go away, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, hopefully he does get another opportunity because you're right, he was literally fighting for a contract, and you know, with that finish and with the confidence in which he actually displayed his abilities on Saturday, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I just think just keep giving him fights, and eventually, you know, everyone is going to see what we see, which is someone great. He has half an arm, but who the fuck cares? He's winning, and everyone likes what? A winner. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So Dana and them are going to have to get over it, you know. 'Cause when he starts selling fights, I guess he won't be that much of a liability. We all know how money talks, you know.
Exactly.
So we're gonna have a combination question because sometimes people send a question and I can combine them.
Thing.
Yeah, but I want to
Okay.
shout them out. Glitch MMA Port. His name is Glitch, but his handle is MMA Port. And Derek Lewis Hotballs, one of my favorites again. And mind you, it's a young lady with this name. The question is for both of them: should Dan Hardy fight again? And also, who would you match him up with? And Dan Hardy, as you know, is a welterweight in the UFC that has not fought in quite a while because he has some type of heart condition, but he is trying to get back into the USADA pool, and he's trying to get the UFC to book him a fight sometime in the future. He doesn't know when, but it's looking like that buzz is coming around. You remember Dan Hardy, right?
Indeed, he's one of our finest exports.
There you go.
The alarm bells start ringing when I hear that Dan Hardy is, re-entered into the testing pool. That Wolff-Parkinson's syndrome, I think it is, that he has, that heart condition, for me is a big worry, only because if he was pulled several years back because of the fact that that was deemed to be an issue, and he still has the same condition, how is it that he can actually be entered back into the pool? Now, for me, it's funny you mentioned, with regard to Gaethje about liability. Can you imagine what would happen if, anything tragic were to actually come about because of the fact that he were re-entered or he was let back into the UFC fold, and actually, some tragedy actually occurred as a result of that. Now, having met Dan, having worked with Dan, having spoken to him, I can see and I can feel the passion that he has for fighting. But also, I can see that his talents, especially cage side, are magnificent. Now, I get the fact that fighters fight, but it does actually worry me, and the whole Wolff-Parkinson's issue isn't going to go away.
No, it's really not going to go away. And I also agree with you. My thing is always fighter safety first. As much as I love to see them in the octagon, performing and entertaining us, I really don't want him back in the UFC fighting if he has some type of condition that is this serious. So I'm not an advocate of him coming back at all. And for him to come back, I would need for the doctors to be clear, Dana to have a press conference. I would need everything so that I could just watch this without feeling guilty or feeling like, oh my God, he's going to die in there. You know what I mean? They would have to roll out the red carpet and really convince me that this guy is okay to fight. And I guess if he did come back, I'm not an advocate for it, but if he did come back, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a Diego Sanchez or maybe a Mickey Gall, because I think Diego is a little bit weathered right now. He's just really tough, and I think Dan could handle him with the striking. And if the UFC wanted to test him but not kill him at the same time, Mickey Gall, because Mickey's going to try to take him down, but Dan's got that nice Muay Thai and that left hook. So I don't want him. I don't want him fighting anybody in the top 5 or in the top 10.
But you see, that further illustrates the issue and the contentious issue that, again, hasn't been addressed. Are we going to deal with Dan Hardy with kid gloves because of the fact that he has this issue? Because what you've just said there does actually lean towards that. But the most, I suppose, important thing here, how far are we going to let this run, considering that there are no bums in the UFC? I mean, you mentioned Diego Sanchez, for example. I would say that would be the worst person to put him against. Diego Sanchez's pace, Diego Sanchez's come forward style isn't going to lend itself to somebody who is returning to the UFC. And as you've kind of alluded to, I'm not sure if that's what you were saying, but as you've actually alluded to, that's not the fight that you would give to Hardy to ease him back into UFC life.
But we also talk about what's easing back into the UFC. Look at Darren Till. He just got mopped up by Masvidal, and it's looking like he's going to fight Gastelum. Do you know what I mean? There's no easy fights in the UFC. And Diego Sanchez is a bit war-torn. You know what I mean? It's his pace is incredible, but it's not Diego from back in the day. But I do agree with you. I don't want to see this shit if he's not 100% correct. And then, and I'm just hypothetically doing this. I'm going to just say that I don't want to see him fight. I like him as a commentator. But, hypothetically, just to answer the question, maybe those two. But I'm not into fighters having conditions in fighting. I know Chris Lieben also has a condition, and he's in bare knuckle fighting. He looks great, but I'm still concerned. And then they're so shady over there. I didn't hear anything about, the doctor clearing him. It was just, he just had a fight, pal.
There you go.
So that makes me uncomfortable, even though I'm happy to see him fighting again, and he looks great. But it makes me nervous. I don't want to see him fight, you know?
Well, I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, finally, right?
We got there eventually.
Right.
Only took 15 episodes. But speaking of Paige, what's the last email you got there or tweet you got there in terms of questions?
This is from Karos MMA, and he's at, let's see, Karos_Bodley, Bodley. Really nice guy, hella into MMA. And this is about, are you familiar with Andrea KGB Lee? That's the young lady that was, she had a domestic violence incident, and it was reported that her husband was like a white supremacist.
Was racist,
yes. Yeah. And then now she's going to fight Joanne Calderwood at UFC 242 in Abu Dhabi. So his question is around her. He said, despite her racist ass husband, do you find yourself rooting or watching Andrea KGB Lee? How do you feel about this? You rooting for her, or does your bias come into the fight, or how do you feel?
100% going to be rooting against her. I want obviously Calderwood being a Brit, I'd like her to succeed, and I'd like her to succeed with gusto. Not only do I rate her as a fighter, but you know, I can't imagine for a second, again, this is personal bias coming in here, but I can't imagine for a second that she was living with this guy for all this time and it didn't come up in conversation and it didn't actually come out in everyday life. There's no way you can tell me that that didn't crop up in some way, shape or form. So, you know, fool me once, but you can't fool me twice.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. And I actually have gotten into some Twitter disputes about this. And I really don't know why the fuck anybody would dispute me on this. If your husband... No, I don't get this. Because, like, if you marry someone that has views like this, so do you.
Yeah.
So do you. I would never marry another woman that is a black extremist because I don't believe in hate. You know what I mean? Like we're not compatible. If I met a woman and she hated white people, Jews and whatnot, I would be like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You're nuts. But the fact that her husband is a supremacist, he had the tattoos, it was confirmed, and you married him means that you all have that in common. Chris Rock did a special on it. Remember, he was like, if your husband smoked crack, you smoke crack. Like, and I just didn't understand why people were attacking me on Twitter when I was like, I'm not supporting her. Because just because he beat her and then she got out of the relationship doesn't mean she's not done with those type of views. Yes, she's overcome domestic violence. Yes, she's left him. I don't care. She might still discriminate against me or my future children because she still might have those views. So, no, I'm not rooting for her. You know what I mean? So, I hope Joanne wins.
Yeah, exactly. And it being Joanne, it being the fact that, you know...
And then it's JoJo.
I'm predominantly... Yeah. I'm predominantly always going to root for the Brit. You know, Joanne will always get my vote. Yeah,
and Joanne also has a much more fun style. Andrea kind of like grinds out her opponent. She's tough as fuck. But JoJo with that teep kick and her little baby face and just the way that she fights is kind of fun, and I like her. You know, I think even without Andrea's racist background, I would not be rooting for her. I like JoJo. I'm going with the Brits on that one, so... That's our answer.
2 things we agreed on today. We're on a roll.
What's going on? Maybe we're smoking crack, like Chris Rock said. Maybe something's going on. What the hell? We never agree. Okay. Yeah.
You know, we haven't done up until now.
What's that?
We haven't mentioned our incredible sponsor. TheProspectApparel.com is where you need to head for 20% off at the checkout when you quote WHOA20. TheProspectApparel.com is actually headed by the prospect in the UFC, and that is Nathaniel the Prospect Wood. If you love to look good, if you love incredible apparel, head over to The Prospect Apparel for all your apparel needs.
Sounds good to me.
Finally, this incredible new segment, which you're going to launch now, I'm all ears. And I'm guessing our listeners are all ears now.
Oh boy, well, Mike, we need to discuss MMA Twitter's Tittygate, and I swear to God, I need to log off Twitter. Like, I don't know what type of shit I be getting into. But, okay, so this is how Tittygate started. I was actually fishing for a mofo of the week. And I wanted to, believe it or not, because everybody thinks I hate men, but I don't. Believe it or not, I wanted to focus on male sexual harassment. I was like, this will be a great take, because men are always like, oh, it happens to us too. And I feel like men feel like they don't have a voice. And then you're a guy and we can talk about it. I was like, boom, bingo. So I tweet, hey guys, have any of you ever gotten a dick pic from another man? Oh my God. I go to bed, I tweet that, and I go to bed because I go to bed early like an old lady. And I wake up to
Me and you both.
Right, but I tweet these bombs, and then I go to sleep and wake up to like Tittygate. So I woke up to Tittygate. Someone on the thread was like, no, I never got a dick pic, but this female sent me her titties in my DMs, and boom, her breasts were on my thread. The walls.
And I have to say, let's just pause just for a second there. We're not going to out this woman.
Nope.
We're not going to ridicule, and we're not going to reveal her real name or even her Twitter handle.
And I'm not revealing the young man's name either.
Suffice to say, yes, for investigative purposes, I looked out the said titties, and I have to say, what possesses somebody to actually send via electronic means, which can be shared, pictures like that? I have to say, I tried with all my might to get those titties out my head, because they were horrendous.
Stop right there.
They were horrible.
I have a listener question for you in reference to those titties.
Yeah.
Still some asshole, because we have listener Tittygate was so big, I have questions for Tittygate. Still some asshole said, hey, Mike and Gina, rate the titty from 1 to 10.
I would say -5.
Oh, wow. Guess what? We don't agree this portion of the segment.
Really?
No, because y'all are forgetting that the titties were voluptuous and they weren't sagging. Yet you never seen some saggy titties? Like, her shits were sitting up. Like, what was so ugly about them? I don't get it. They were not sagging. A lot of titties sag and it's gross.
Well, to be fair, if you remember the actual, I'm scraping through memory because I glanced at them and then that was it. That was it for me. It looked as though you talk about shape and pertness. It looked as though she was cupping those, so they weren't standing on their own. She was cheating.
Oh.
Yes.
Maybe that's why, because I was like, bingo, like. I thought they were full and voluptuous, and I didn't see a problem with them. I didn't think she was the cutest girl in the world, God bless her, but I thought her titties were cute. So from a 1 to 10, I would say like a 6. A 6.5.
6?
Yeah.
That's a high rating.
Because I thought they were...
That's more than half.
I'm used to seeing saggy-ass titties, and I think they're disgusting. I hate when titties start to age and they can reach the floor. Hers were perky. You got to give her, something for perky breasts. A lot of women, them bra come off, the titties hit the floor, pow, it's nasty.
Nah, like I say, she had assistance, and that to me is cheating. Her titties had PEDs. The PEDs were the hands.
Oh my God. Well, that was our question about the rating them. And, believe it or not, I spoke to the young man because I hit his DMs and I was like, bro, what the hell is going on? And what did you do? Like, and here's the controversy with Tittygate. He split MMA Twitter in half. And I'd love to ask you some questions about this because I'm also confused. Okay, I'm going to speak for a lot of women here. We were familiar with this young lady, and I'm going to admit that I noticed her kind of seeking men's attention a lot. And to the point that a lot of us frowned on it or were just as like, man, she's thirsty. So when this happened, a lot of females did not have pity for her. But then all of a sudden, a lot of men were white knighting for her. And they were like, no, the guy's a piece of shit for putting her titties on blast. And me and the girls are like, no, because you need to have enough self-esteem. You need to love yourself enough to know not to just give your titties to MMA Twitter strangers. You need to be comfortable with somebody. You might need to meet them in person. And then come to find out, Michael, she sent these titties to a couple of guys.
Wow.
He's not the only one. So that's why he was like, that's why I put her on Front Street, because I know she does this to other dudes. I did not ask for them. We were just kind of flirty in the DMs. I didn't ask for that shit. And now he's being attacked. And I did notice men are white knighting and women are like, fuck her. But my question to you, Michael, is who do you think is at blame? Is it both? Is it him? Is it her? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, put it this way. Look, she put those in the public domain the moment that she actually sent that tweet or that DM. So I wouldn't say that she's to blame, but what I would say, look at the blowback that has now occurred and look at the wider debate that has now occurred on that one action. So what I would say is there was obviously a lapse of judgment there. What wasn't helped was that being fanned in terms of the flames being actually exacerbated by this guy actually spreading this now. Now, they are both at fault. I know it's going to sound like a bit of a cop-out in terms of an answer, but they are both at fault. There was obvious lack of judgment on both parts. But let's just, not get this twisted. These were two consenting adults. At the end of the day, Tiddygate only occurred because one misjudged the other in that she thought she was sending it to one man and one man only for his consumption. But obviously that wasn't in his intentions as soon as he got wind that other men had actually been sent the same pic.
And perhaps she sent it to him too quick. It sounds like he just lost respect for her, because he did also tell me, he was like, Gina, I saw the same thing that you saw, that she was very flirtatious and very throwing herself at men in random posts all the time. And in my mind, I can
imagine that.
But why did you entertain her? That doesn't mean entertain it,
Well, I can imagine that these Tatars weren't the first. The picture of the Tatars wasn't the first picture that she'd taken, but she was probably using the same picture in several of her posts.
That's what I heard.
The key thing is, look, I can't put anybody on blast for adult behavior, but what I do put you on blast for is your lack of judgment. And it's lack of judgment on both parts. So they're both to blame.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I feel guilty because I know that if I get a dick pic, I'm going to retweet it, probably send it to the local news, the mayor of New York. Like, I'm going to make sure that nobody ever fucking sends me another dick pic again. So it's like, I kind of look at him and be like, shit, I might have done the same thing, just because it's like, I don't want this shit. Don't send it to me. You send it to me. I put it on a tree, like my cat's missing or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to tell everybody about your little dick. Don't send me any dick pics. So I feel bad kind of getting in his ass when I probably might have done the same thing.
Again, human nature is that we want witnesses to condemnation. Am I being overly, am I being out of order here? Am I being over the top here in my reaction? You want some kind of judgment or somebody to help you with your judgment. So of course you're going to court opinion. So I wouldn't say that's wrong in what you do, but there are consequences to those actions is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so funny. Just today on the way home today on the train, I opened Twitter and I see that he's the person that tweeted this is now kind of throwing me under the bus for this, as in true fashion.
Wow.
As in true fashion, MMA Twitter. It's my fault that things occur on MMA Twitter. I started a new hashtag called #BlameG. Because he had said something like, oh, because I was on this thread, now I'm in 20 different beefs. And it's like, I hope he's joking. Maybe it's just a joke that went over my head, but hopefully you're joking and really not blaming me for me trying to get information on advocating for men and sexual harassment on Twitter so that I can talk about it on our podcast, and then you upload titties and now it's my fault. Hopefully he's joking, because I do, I'm always involved in something. I get that. But if you're really like blaming me for this and stuff like that, that's kind of corny. And I thought the joke, even if you are joking, it's kind of distasteful. Like, you uploaded the titties while I was sleeping on a thread that was about men getting dick pics. So don't throw me under the bus, bro.
I think anybody who looks to offload their lack of judgment onto you because you are talking about the wider implications of it, again, just underlines the lack of judgment and the lack of forethought in actually putting things out there. Look, this is another example. He's now rounding on you because of the fact that, there is this whole discussion going on.
Yeah, it's my fault.
That, you didn't name him personally. So why should you be accountable? How is it your problem now? The fact that he started this and we're now here discussing it.
And it's a kind of like a slap in the face almost too, because it's like, I listen to like my guy followers. They're always like, me too, almost like the movement. Like, it happens to us too. So I'm like, you know what? Me and you have a podcast and you're a guy and I can get your guy perspective. Fuck that. We're going to talk about male harassment. What does he do? While me trying to be an advocate for men in harassment, he throws me under the bus. But I'm sure when he sees my tweet, he's going to throw me under the bus. Oh, I'm too sensitive. Learn how to take a joke. But even if it was a joke, it was distasteful to kind of be like, yo, this is kind of your fault. No, take accountability. Because, I'm telling you this right now. If I did that, Mike, no, that's why I'm not upset. I'm laughing. It's when I opened my phone and saw it was like, yo, G, I'm not commenting on your threads no more. I got 20 different beefs right now. Immediately, I was like, here we go. You block somebody because they're an asshole. It's me. You try to do a thread on male harassment for a podcast because you know men are listening and they complain about this. It's my fault that you uploaded titties while I was asleep. And now I don't want to comment on your threads no more. Way to take accountability. Because you know what's so funny, Michael? If I had done that, I would just be like, that's it, I'm Tittygate. You know what I'm saying? I did it. I did that shit. I would take accountability. I wouldn't be making no jokes. I'd just be like, yeah, I did that shit. She a thought. You know what I mean?
Wow.
If I was him, I'm not saying she is, but if I was him, I wouldn't be making jokes about like, oh, I'm not going to comment on nobody's thread. I would just own up to it. I would take accountability for it. So it was kind of corny to me that he did that.
You know, I'm guessing that you can hear the bass in my laugh because every single week I sign this podcast up. This wonderful vehicle that we both contribute to now with Make Some Trouble, and people are living the brand. I love it.
Yeah, and Michael, we need to also discuss, y'all need to send me and Michael the worst casual tweets that you've ever seen so we can break down why they're so horrible or maybe why you're so sensitive. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what people send us in our DMs. Like, hey, I think this guy's take on Conor or this fight that we just watched was trash and here's why. And I'd love to discuss it because you might be wrong or maybe the person's tweet is, kind of casual like. So I implore the listeners to kind of send us some stuff about casuals. It'd be great.
Yeah, but at the same time, let's be careful that we don't actually become a victim of our own, what we're actually advocating against. We don't really want to get into a situation where we're seen as bullies or outing people. So perhaps there's a way of actually anonymizing it. But
names do not need to be mentioned. No, let me just put that out there. This is not something to be like, oh, this person's handle is a casual. Not at all. Yeah, it's going to be, this is what was said, and let's break it down. And Michael, like I said, it could be you. It could be like, no, this is actually a good take on things, So it's not to bully people at all, and names will not be mentioned. So, no, you're absolutely right, Michael.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to that section next week. And speaking of next week, we'll be here in our usual slot, our usual time, our usual day. Until then, make some trouble.
Always, bro. I'll see you next week.
Woo.